Thank you, Rhonda, again so much. All right. You have the pleasure of having me, Jan, and Chris give you some of our thoughts and our ideas about the walk beyond living the new story. And they let me start this off. So hang in there, y'all. It's getting better. Okay. My thoughts, my words. Last week, I attended two high school commencement graduations. One was at a ball field, a baseball stadium, and the other one was at the big football stadium within the school. Huge. And there was about 300 students graduating in each of those classes. Unbelievable. I don't even know where all those kids came from. And I wondered, how did this happen? How did we go from a one-room schoolhouse with grades 1 to 12 to a big field of 300 students that you really couldn't see their faces and you only knew how to yell out when they called their names? It was like, how did this happen? Where did all these kids come from? How are they so beautiful? How are they just keep coming and having so much to say? During the ceremonies, if your last name began with an A, you had to sit there all the way through till they got to the end of the W, X, Y's, and Z's students calling their names. Because you couldn't leave, you had to find out what the end results was gonna be. And if your person's name was ended in X, Y, W, X, Y, or Z, you could not come late. You know, we know we're going to a concert and we only want to see that one person. So we wait until we know they're going to be on stage and we make all the fuss and push everybody out of the way. And we're sitting there. You can't do that as a commitment ceremony. You can't do that as a graduation because you have to hear every word. You have to find your child in that midst of people, all the students. You have to hear about their accomplishments and know that your child was also part of that. To know that they did good, they did well. You had to hear them say the name. As they say your name. And I'm wondering, how did this happen? Because all the seats were good when it started out in the classroom, when it started out in the gym or the lunchroom or the auditorium. You were definitely able to get a good seat and see everything. Ceremony now starts at 6, 7 o'clock. You better get there by 4:30 and find a place to sit and stand and yell. You got to be, and you hope that you will be able to hear everything that's being said because it's important. The valedictorians took you through from kindergarten all the way to the 12th grade, where they were sitting there, and people in front of you had teddy bears and flowers and big balloons, lots of balloons. And you heard the air horns going off, and you hear the blowing of the trumpets and everything every time somebody did something. And you stayed right there, being as proud as you could. And you listened to the valedictorian, the salutatorian, tell the stories from kindergarten all the way up to the 12th grade. And one of those kids even mentioned about losing someone, but the big change that they made in their life. And you sat there and you listened and you smiled. Even if it was a college graduation, you sat there and you listened and you smiled. And you know how encouraging the teachers were and how proud they were to walk down the aisle. And finally, you hear what you were waiting for. They stood up, holding the tassel on the right, and hearing the words, "You have completed all of the requirements governed by your state. You are no longer a student. You are now a graduate. Move that tassel from your right to your left side." And I just found out what that actually meant, because I said, well, why is it on the right? For one thing, the dictionary said that because this is a right-handed world. I know a few left-handed people. And then the other side says, the other people say, it was just to show that you accomplished something. That, as we said, you moved up. You are now living a new story in your life. And I just want to close with saying, years in 1996, there was a song that everyone sang at every graduation. And it didn't make a difference now. It should not make a difference now who wrote that song. And it should not make a difference now who sung that song at that time. Because the kids yelled it out and you yelled it out too. And that song was, "I Believe I Could Fly. I could spread my wings and I can fly away." And believe me, the song, the words is what we are celebrating today. Thank you. Thank you. Mhm.
Still,
Jan, please.
still muted,
Okay.
Jan.
Sorry, having trouble unmuting. This is not my tech day, so I apologize. I've already killed one laptop and I'm on my tablet, so bear with me. I am here for you. The tech, that's a whole different issue. So thank you, Joan, for what you shared. You know, we have three practitioners here, and we are an interesting group. We are all different, and we are all one. And we all have our own views of things, and we love each other. Absolutely. So our annual theme for this year is rooted in oneness and living as principle. And the June theme is commencement as communion. Today's topic is the walk beyond, living the new story. So what I thought of sharing with you is my many graduations. I counted up the other day, and I can't remember my kindergarten graduation, but I will share this with you. As a kindergartner, I was probably one of the shyest kids you will ever meet. Those of you who know me now probably don't believe that, but most of the pictures when I was that young have me hiding behind somebody or crying or some combination thereof. What I do know about kindergarten is we had just left the first place that I remember as a child, which was a farm in Rhode Island, which is a very different existence for the many existences that followed. So among the many things I remember from the farm is that my landlord was blind. And he usually just came in the summer. He lived in New Jersey. And I got to go visit him, probably to get out of my mother's hair, I'm not sure. But I learned from his wife and him how to hand somebody scissors or a knife, especially if they couldn't see. And that is the most important thing that I learned as a young person in Rhode Island, I think. I mean, I also had some experiences with some snakes in the grass and being bit by many, many bees, but we won't go there. So my next place to live was in Connecticut. And we lived there until I was about fourth grade. And I can remember a lot of whispering going on in my classroom before I left. And, I took it personal, right? I don't know what was going on. Apparently, they were planning a party for me. Another lesson: it's not always what you think is happening. Good lesson for life. So the next place I lived was in New Jersey, and I was still pretty shy. But I can remember as I was coming out of that shyness, my seventh grade teacher saying to me, maybe you should go back to being a little more shy. So I guess I came out a little loud if I'm reading that right. But I remember eighth grade graduation, because one of the reasons my dad had been offered the job in this location is he had previously been the superintendent of schools when a district built their first high school. And this was to happen again in New Jersey. But the thing that I remember most about New Jersey is being in the band, being part of a family. And when a year or so later, my dad announced we were moving, boy, I was upset. So I will tell anybody who listens, do not move your kids in high school, because they're leaving their families. And interestingly enough, the next school I went to, one of my friends said, I always felt bad for you because we all knew each other and you didn't know anybody. And one of the saviors was I went into the band again. So I had a little bit of a family. But anyway, eighth grade graduation, I can see myself, because being a band member, even when your ceremony comes, you are often still in the band. And I can see myself getting up from my seat, where I think I was playing bass clarinet at the time, and walking up to the stage to get my diploma. So my 12th grade graduation was a bit different. You know how on graduation day they give you a rain date in case it rains? Now you have to remember, this is before beepers, before cell phones. The only phone around was a public, what I call them, coin operated phones, and everybody was standing online because we knew we weren't going to have graduation. And then they said, yes, we are. And it poured like a son of a gun. So we're all calling our parents, we're really going to have graduation. Well, I already told you my dad was a superintendent of schools at a neighboring district, because the high school was not built there yet. So here I am rushing around telling my father and mother that we're actually going to have graduation, and they're rushing to get there. Well, you know what? The next day, the principal called to apologize to my dad. Do you think he called all the other parents? Nah. But he knew my dad was the neighboring superintendent of schools. So he got a call of apology. Well, we're sorry, but we decided, blah, blah, blah. He even at the one reunion I went to remembered that he had apologized to my dad. Another life lesson: be careful what you got to apologize for. So I went on to college, got a BA, brilliant psychologist that I am, ha, ha, ha. Hofstra University. But I'm not going to tell you about my graduation. The graduation that was important to me was another time I was in a band. The year before me, the speaker was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I will never remember, I'll never, ever forget one statement he made in reference to our country. And he defined it and said that America was in its infantilist ethicalism. That's hard words to say together, but you get the message. Now, you all know it's been at least 50 years since I got my BA. So obviously that made an impression on me. When I got my MA from William Patterson, we had two speakers. One was the then governor of New Jersey. The other one was a major football player whose name I don't remember, but I can see him, who went on to become a congressperson. So I've had some interesting speakers in my graduations, in my commencements, and in others. And of course, I graduated again when I became a massage therapist at almost 50. And I graduated from practitioner training. And those two last ones were challenges for me. I was not somebody who studied science. I was not somebody who thought I would ever become any of those things. But I had gone to a past life regression workshop. And in those kinds of workshops, you journal and you meditate and you do all kinds of things. And at some point before the ending of the workshop, it had come to me. I'm going to massage school. Where did it come from? I don't know. But, it kind of goes back to when I got my bachelor's. And the first college I went to, I lived on a very short hall. There were only 7 or 8 rooms there. I think actually we nicknamed the ladies' room 8. Just anybody in room 8? No, it's open. But at any rate, I had friends, and some of them weren't so good at being on time for their dates. And I guess I was sitting around a lot, so I got to go and tell the boyfriend she's not ready yet. So I had a tendency to stand behind the boyfriend and rub his shoulders. So maybe, that led to the idea of being a massage therapist many years later. But I will also tell you that the boyfriend went to Vietnam and didn't come back. Life lesson. Don't wait to do nice things. So when I got my practitioner training, I had not been in school for a number of years. And of course, practitioner training is very different from going to lots of other kinds of schools. So what is the topic for today? The walk beyond, living the new story. I have a belief, which sometimes is shared by others because I pick up ideas all around the place. But I believe that what we do in life and what we experience is a compilation, coming together of all the things that have gone before. And as we say so often as practitioners, we have a choice. We can unify and harmonize with what shows up, or we can reject it. Many life experiences will cause us to go the other way, to look the other way, to judge. And some of them will just all fit into place. So somebody asked me one time, well, why did you go to be a practitioner? Of course, she was a big scientist, so she's not really a spiritual person, although she is and doesn't know it. I said, no, I'm not out of sorts. This is just more of who I am. This is more of a pathway to, for want of a better word, I'm going to call it connection. So that's my story, ladies and gentlemen. We got a gentleman with us. Oh yeah, there's Ricky and Ron. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to our world famed author, Miss Chris Ferraro.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet. I need that little boost today. I want to thank Jan and Joan for picking this topic because, this is commencement time and I am a public speaker. And so every year around this time, I develop some degree of bitterness that nobody's asking me to come and do their commencement speech. I live in Montclair. I graduated from Montclair State. I'm not a big enough deal for you guys to invite me. I'm not a big enough deal yet. But I look at speeches and talks and things like that because I find myself really inspired by them. And it's kind of interesting when I think about commencement, I think about Steve Jobs' very famous commencement speech in 2005, which was before he died. And I remember seeing a video of that speech and being so inspired by it, and then learning that in life he wasn't really the nicest guy. Yet he was dealing with a deadly illness, and being faced with that deadly illness, he um, developed some wisdom and left the world a better place, from having left that speech. And sometimes these commencement speeches can be really controversial. Last year, an NFL kicker told a group of college graduates, including young women, that their real roles were as wives and mothers. And you can imagine I had a lot of opinions about that as well. So there's oftentimes I think about what would I have wanted to hear. I had a graduation from 8th grade, and I had a high school graduation, but that's it. I didn't go to any of my college graduations. My family wasn't big on attending things that I was a part of. And so, because it wasn't important to them, it also became not important to me. I was a rebel. I thought of it all as pomp and circumstance. Ha ha ha, you see that joke there. And, so I saw it all as, old tradition, not important. I feel differently now. I learned in the early part of my spiritual awakening the power of ritual. And all of us are descended from tribal communities in which ritual was a part of everyday living. And it was a way of bringing sacredness and meaning to even sometimes everyday experiences. And the secular world that we live in now has lost a lot of that. We make a big deal about weddings, right? And sometimes there's a big deal about funerals or memorial services. But I bet everyone here has known someone who's passed away in which there was no goodbye, in which there was no funeral or memorial service. And for those of you who have attended them, you know how important they are. And so, as an 18-year-old, um, graduating, I moved in high school. I lived in New Jersey until I was 15. And then in between freshman and sophomore year, my parents moved to Florida. My siblings were older and they stayed here. And I didn't like living in Florida very much. It was a very painful time in my life being there. And during those 3 years, I was severely picked on and bullied by people who couldn't possibly understand who I was. And as a creative, as someone who shaved my head, as someone who sewed by hand some of my own clothing from remnants that I would get at the local fabric store, I know this is shocking, I was not a popular kid. And so for me, high school was about getting out, right? Getting out. It would take me 2 more years to get out because I was paying for school myself. So I lived at home and went to the local junior college for the first 2 years, and I worked two full-time jobs. So I worked 80 hours a week, and I went to college full-time to save money to leave and come back to New Jersey, where I came to Montclair State. And here I am living in Montclair since 1990, all these years later. So it was a time of, I'm finally an adult. I can finally get out of here. But I had a lot of wrong thinking about the way that life worked. I was very cynical, very, very, very pessimistic. I had inherited some of those qualities within my family lines and had plenty of evidence to describe um, why life was incredibly unfair. And so when I think about what my 18-year-old self really, really needed to know, these are the things that I wish that I had heard at my commencement. So the first one is I wish someone had told me that my primary relationships were with myself and the God of my own understanding. I was desperate to be loved and looking for love in all the wrong places. At that age, desperate to fill a gap within me with people who were outside of myself. Um, that would take me down a lot of wrong turns. Uh, Getting married to someone I only knew for 3 months when I was 22. It's shocking, I know. It didn't work out very well, okay? And getting into a lot of trouble, okay? And my poor heart got very bruised and very scarred in all of that. So I wish that someone had told me that I was connected to the power of all that is, that that which has created everything had created unique and sensitive me, exactly the way that I was, and that this power could become something in which I could trust. That that which I had not been given in childhood, that I could have found that mother, father, God influence and been reparented by that which I really came from. That I was so much more than just a human being and so much more than my mother and father's daughter, that I was a child of God and a child of the universe. And that my relationship with myself would be reflected in all my other relationships. And that wasn't just romantic relationships, it showed up in friendships and jobs. Any kind of connection that we have is a relationship. And so I wish that I had known that learning to love and accept myself would have had a profound impact on the relationships that I was going to be leading and going forward. That when I am in full acceptance of who I am, that that can be reflected back to me by the people that I draw into my life. And that when I feel unworthy or undeserving, that that will be reflected back into my life. And so I did what many people do, which we are socialized to do, which is we try to change what's happening outside of us so that we can feel differently. If only I found that one true love. If only I got that perfect job for me. If only I looked the way I always wanted to look. If only I had lost that weight, right? If only I could change something outside of myself, then I would feel okay within. And so that's also something I wish someone had told me, that all of creation really comes from the inside out. And I wasted a lot of energy, not wasted, I learned a lot, but I expended a lot of energy in pursuit of trying to change what was outside of me while neglecting my inner world. And so I really wish that I had known that sooner, although I was someone who started going to the self-help section of a bookstore when I was 16. I don't know how much earlier I would have needed to know it. I don't know. Do they have any self-help books for kindergartners? I could have used them. So the other thing is I wish that someone had told me that success, that real true success is how happy and fulfilled and connected I am. We get a lot of information that our success is dependent upon money, purchasing homes, what our car looks like, what our partner does for a living, um, whether we have children, right? If we're checking the boxes of what we're told a successful life is. And the truth is that one of the things that my energy coaching practice has taught me more than anything else is that it really is about how happy, fulfilled, and connected you are with your own soul and your real true desires. I have people that metaphorically walk through the doors of my practice that you would think had it all. Beautiful homes, money, travel, attractive spouses, beautiful kids, and they are incredibly depressed and sometimes can hardly get out of bed or are afraid of their own shadow because they went along and did what society told them to do to check the boxes. Okay, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this. And they thought that that was going to make them happy. And they wake up and they realize that they don't even know what their true desires are. And so, what I want to say to everyone here is that our desires are so individualized. And yet, we arrive in this society where we're be given a cookie cutter expectation of what our happiness is going to look like. I think a lot of people could look at my life and feel like I'm not a success. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment that I rent. I don't own anything. I have a 10-year-old car, but I love myself. I'm in love with the work that I do in the world. I feel creatively expressed where I was creatively shut down for much of my life. And now I feel creatively expressed. And I experience more love in my life in ways that I didn't know that I could experience real love. And so I'm thinking about how a few months ago I went to visit one of my oldest friends that I'm still in touch with. And she and her wife live in Newark, Delaware, which happens to be a college town. So it's cute. There's lots of little cute shops and restaurants. And so we went out for lunch and we were walking around and we went into a place and they had stickers. And I bought this sticker and put it on my water bottle because it made me laugh really hard. It says, English majors doing it for the money. Right? It made me laugh out loud. I wasn't even an English major. I was a sociology major, right? But I looked at that because the young people in my life and the young people that I interact with are doing it all for the money because they've been socialized by a world and by social media that has led them to believe that designer purse and that dress and that trip and that this and that is what is going to make them happy. And the colleges are filled with people that are going into business and finance and marketing, right? And where's all the social workers? Where's the educators? Where's the teachers, right? And so I got that and I put it on my water bottle and I look at it every day and it makes me giggle because writing has been something that's given me such enormous happiness. It's enabled me to learn about myself through journaling, and it's enabled me to give me a voice to be able to express to others. And so if I had been an English major, that would have been a very good choice for me. I'm an English major of life, I suppose, right? Because I'm always working on languaging. And that's something that I wish that these young people knew because I see them burning themselves out at such young ages trying to be perfect. One of my nieces has a 14-step skincare regimen. 14 steps. She's 26 and absolutely beautiful and does not need any one of those products. And I said to her, well, this is what you're just spending on your skincare. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? But it's this pressure that they have to want to present something to the world that they think is going to satisfy and fulfill them. And they are missing out on their inner world, on this rich, rich, rich inner world. I really wish that someone had taught me about forgiveness and not in the Catholic way of forgiveness that I grew up with. I now know that forgiveness starts with processing the pain. We live in a world where it's very easy to step on one another's toes, okay? A lot of times it's not intentional. There's lots of times there's misunderstandings that happen. And there's lots of times people are compromised in ways that affects their ability to show up for you or be the kind of friend or lover or family member that you would really like. It's not personal. And so it's so imperative that on a regular basis, we process that emotional pain. And then on the other side of it, that we move into forgiveness, not from this lofty place of, I am bestowing my forgiveness upon lowly you. It's not about that. It's about, I'm a perfect soul having a flawed human experience, and you're a perfect soul having a flawed human experience. Ultimately, we're all doing the best that we can. And I'm going to let you off the hook because I don't want to carry this poison in my body and my mind and in my heart. So that's the things that I wish that I knew that really would have made a profound difference in my life. And I am enormously grateful that these are the things that I have learned in the path of exploring where's my happiness, because I have been lost lots of times in my life. And yet that still small voice has piped up exactly when I've needed it and has told me to be hopeful, to be optimistic, to know that I am worthy of more and that life really can work for me. And following that still small voice has taken me on the greatest adventure that I could ever imagine. This adventure of healing and revealing of who I am and embracing life and embracing myself and letting go of expectations and allowing myself to be with what is and what life brings me. It has been far more fulfilling than even being on a safari or going on a gondola through Venice. That the greatest adventures lie within us, and each of us has the power to take that path, to learn, and to grow. And that's what we're here for. Thank you.